Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. So we have once again come to the end of another Cursed City rotation. In fact, the last unique rotation of the Cursed City, meaning that going forward, we are going to see previous iterations of the Cursed City or previous rotations. So I think they said, Plagueholme said that it's not going to be a copy of rotation 5, so we're not going to get back-to-back of the exact same rotation. But nonetheless, we are going to see something random between 1 through 4. So with that in mind, let me know in the comment section down below if you guys are keen to see a continuation of this series. Obviously, I'm not going to go through every single boss stage like I have been doing, just because it's going to be a repeat of some previous rotation, so my teams probably aren't going to change. I'm just going to run the same things, but I might update you guys on how far I was able to get in Soulcross Hard, for example. So let me know in the comment section down below if you'd like me to continue with the series, but more abridged, focused on how far I can get within each rotation. So when it comes to rotation 5, starting off on normal, as always, we have completed every stage as usual. Once again, stating that I am well into the end game, and so this is not a difficult task for me to do, just to do the normal version of the Cursed City, including Amius. So we'll go over that as well. And I do run the same team for Amius on hard and normal. So when I show you guys my hard team, you'll understand how I did the same thing for normal. And when it comes to hard, we made it slightly further than the previous 2 iterations. We made it to S8, stage 8, but we got stuck there. It was close. I'm quite close, but I'm not quite there, and I need another champion, I think, to be able to beat it. But obviously with 2 days left, that's just not going to happen, but we'll get to that a bit later. So of course, the other goal that I do like to try to achieve is completing all of the easier or the lower 3 sections, so Plagueholme, Cobblemarket, and Deadrise, which I did manage to do on hard, and then progress as far as possible into Soulcross. So Cobblemarket, once again, is all complete. Usually not a problem for me. I always like to highlight the Bommel team. In this case, they were kind of mean, honestly. They put HP in support, so I was really lacking on DPS. And so basically, I just put in 3 high resist champions, at least the way I have them built. And Mithrala basically just A1'd and just poisoned him to death. So we resisted all of his bombs and all the buff strips and all that stuff. And then we just slowly whittled him down with poisons on the A1. And that's how we beat that one. So not too complicated. Moving over to Plagueholme, I do like to highlight the Eternal Dragon and hard mode Fire Knight. So we were able to use Newt, which made the Fire Knight portion, or the hard mode Fire Knight portion, extremely easy. So he's our solo freeze champion, and as far as controlling the turn meter. And then everyone else, Ferric in the Fat as well, helps ally attack to break the shield. That's important to note. You also technically do have access to like Blizzard the Howler if you did that fusion, so another champion, if you don't have Newt, for example, who can do a triple hitter A1 that has a chance to freeze. So it'll be slower, less damage, but it's still better, or it can still work, and it can help you break the shield. And then I think, Skull Crusher as well, if you wanted to play that strategy where you have counterattack up. So lots of options that you could have used to beat this one, but for me, because I do have Newt and company, is able to do that. Yakarl also could be used for hard mode Fire Knight, but yeah, basically Newt and Ferric in the Fat were to help me break the shield and keep the turn meter down on the Fire Knight, and then Herndig and Yannicka were there to deal damage to the Eternal Dragon and kill him in the meantime. Moving over to stage 12 of Plagueholme, similar story here, but we have the Scarab King and the Spider. And so we had a couple of healers that are just there to keep us alive. Glacea, honestly, this is a weird team, I have to admit, but Glacea is basically in there because she has block debuffs, and I was abusing the fact that Herndig could place decreased accuracy on the Scarab King. So because we don't really have that much blood shield on this team, I think the only one who has blood shield is Newt, who's on my OG, or who's on my current Scarab King team, my real Scarab King team. But we're using the fact that Herndig has a decreased accuracy, so he has less of a chance to steal our buffs and provoke everyone. And then even if he were able to do so, we had block debuffs from Glacea, and then we just have 2 healers and revivers to help keep people alive so that we don't die, because we're constantly taking the counterattacks, as I mentioned, from the Scared King. And then Herndig obviously has a bunch of AoEs that are really, really strong for the Spider and the Spiderlings, and the turn meter control means that the main Spider doesn't get a turn. So very basic composition here with just a couple of DPS, a way to protect us from the Scarab King's numerous counterattacks, and then some healers to keep the team alive. Moving over to stage 16, one of my least favorite ones, but this one wasn't too bad. This was an interesting one as well. I tried numerous variations of this composition with the same core, but essentially Newt's in there because he's Newt, and so we can just get a lot of damage right out of the gate on whichever boss. I think I was picking the Nether Spider in his case. Stultus is great because he is immune to all things poison, so he counters both of these bosses perfectly, and so that is pretty handy. And then Walking Tomb Drang is built high resistance, AoE HP burn, which can be handy, but more importantly, he has that A3 that can act as a heal, so to speak, as long as someone's full HP. And then we had Narcisse in there because DPS, I think he died actually, he didn't really do much. And then Helior is in there unbooked on my account, but nonetheless, he's useful just because he has that ability where he can effectively cleanse your team, but he takes all the debuffs and transfers it to an enemy. And so essentially right at the beginning of the fight, I take all the Nether Spider starting poisons and just throw it right on the dragon and then move on. But I think in the end, like Newt, Narcisse, and Helior all died to the second bout of poisons from the dragon, and then Stultus with his immunity and Walking Tomb Drang just healing himself relative to Stultus' health was able to just finish off the two bosses. So it's kind of a bit of a duo in the end, but starting off with a little bit of damage from the rest of them. Moving over to Deadrise, and we love to mention the Scarab King, and I have this really well thought out team here that you can see, which is basically Duhanarak, who is in Blood Shield, and Farrakhan the Fat, who provides poisons and HP burn, who is not in Blood Shield. So essentially Duhanarak is keeping both of them running, cleansed, and healing up, and then whenever he's not provoked, Farrakhan can run in there either with an ally attack or just place some poisons and HP burn. Took a long time, but I basically just set them off and walked away for 20 minutes or however. No, probably not 20 minutes, probably like 10 minutes, and then just let them kill it. I knew they weren't going to die, just because the amount of continuous heals that are being provided by Duhanarak are pretty ridiculous. So basically a duo, not much strategy here. I think some other people in my clan had destroy sets on people, or I guess, yeah, Ricked Off the Bolt here soloing. So various compositions. You have a lot of access to turn meter control. So you have Allure, you have Yakarl, you have Skimfos, and you can opt for all of those if you have Blood Shield on all those people. But in this case, I didn't want to build a Blood Shield-ish team. I just put some poisons and burns and just let it tick away, because you only have to do it once, right? So didn't put that much effort into it. And then stage 15 was kind of interesting. We had Bommel and hard mode Ice Golem. So I'd say the MVP here, probably Fenax. Made it real easy because we could just block revive on the minions so they didn't come back ever. So that was pretty handy. Newt is Newt. Herndig, again, just general DPS, but obviously AoE decrease defense. Gresh, a little bit of healing. And then Glacea can, again, provide block debuff so we don't take the freeze from the Ice Golem whenever he tries to counterattack. And so that brings us to my short stint once again in Soulcross. So obviously I didn't make it that far, but I did knock out some pretty cool stages, I have to admit. These are kind of a crapshoot depending on what the champions you have and which ones are built, more importantly. So stage 1 was pretty cool. It got to use Ruel, Gorlos featured Luria, who I built for last rotation. She came in handy. Lord Chazar, pretty niche but useful. And then Salad over here, Mashald. Pretty useful. That's a pretty cool comp. Stage 3 was interesting. Got to whip out the Kale brothers. I guess we can call them that. Normal Kale, who's in my account, is in a stun set. Judge is also in a stun set. I use them for Dune Tower Hard Secret Rooms. Foley's nice, block revive, and Ninja is there for the freeze, so a little bit of CC. But decrease attack on Dark Kale, very handy against a lot of these waves that are attack based. Stage 2 obviously didn't finish that one. This one I just don't have enough firepower. I probably could have made something work with building Bistafist because he has AoE block active skills, which is pretty useful. AoE decrease defense as well. Bloodgorged has that mini lockout, mini warlord ability, which could have been useful. Then Mountain King can come in there with Thylesia, AoE decrease defense. But because I didn't have a 5th person to use, I didn't really want to bother building 2 more champions just to try and see, especially for a stage that's not mandatory for me to progress. So that was kind of if I get there, maybe, but it wasn't a high priority. Might as well highlight the Iron Twins team. Nothing really special, kind of just Brimstone with between Mishinaki and Riho. Riho obviously does every debuff under the sun, which is pretty useful. Triple healer to keep everyone alive. And then obviously we can revive with Godseeker in area, people die, and then Harima, obviously primary DPS. Even though she's negative affinity, she got enough hits in over the course of the fight to just kind of deal damage to him. So that was pretty neat. Stage 4 was definitely fun. Got to flex a little bit on the Void legendaries here, but King Narcisse obviously being the primary DPS, Solus being pretty neat. I don't have him booked either, but he does have a 100% chance to provoke unbooked on his A3, I think, which is pretty neat. Dagger making her appearance on the team. AoE decreased defense. It's a 75% chance to land, but nonetheless, that's enough that you need, enough for what you need most of the time. Skull Crown, just because constant AoE is pretty handy. Arbiter, increased attack for the attack-based champions. But honestly, I could have also used Ethlin the Golden, because he does also have True Fear and block active skills, which can be pretty useful. And then obviously Reliquary Tender could be a cleanser healer if you need that. So a lot of options for that one. Stage 6, I actually made it past the stage this time, and it took a good amount of tries, a lot of iteration, a little bit of, like a tiny bit of gear swapping, not a ton. But so yeah, Hoskarul making his return, such a good epic champion, a previous fusion long ago, a couple years ago. Shield Guard featuring here once again. And then Armiger, because I needed someone else, and I didn't really have anyone else who fit the category. I thought about building Vala for AoE decreased defense, even though it's not 100% chance, but I didn't want to try to invest in someone if I didn't really need to, so I wanted to try with the champions that I had. And then Rockbreaker, MVP, the AoE provoke with the counterattack, put him, I guess we'll talk about him later as far as what he's built in. And then Newt, of course, because Newt. So honestly, this is one of my least favorite stages because of the Leorius the Proud on wave 1, because no matter what you do, he's going to get a turn. Unless you have like a Basher or a Warlord or something to lock him out, he's going to get a turn, which means he's going to get a big AoE off, which means he's most likely going to land True Fears and Weakens, and he could just start one-shotting people. It's because you're going to get him low if you're trying to kill him. So, and you have to proc his unkillable unless you have block buffs. So it's just really tedious to deal with him, and I don't like it. But stage 7, this one is pretty straightforward. Lydia Vlad kind of carried it, decreased defense, block active skills, Necrep protecting someone, and then Supreme Gale, you can see here, fully unascended. I think he's in a stun set right now, just because he doesn't need accuracy, so I built him in like a relatively good resistance stun set. And so he doesn't even have like the full stats, and so he was just kind of a AoE on every ability. Whenever he could land a stun was helpful, but basically carried by Vlad on that one. And then we get to the sticking points. Obviously S23 doesn't really matter, but this is one where I just didn't have enough awakening across the champions to really make it worth anything, so I just couldn't add up to 20. Unfortunate. In stage 8, I gave this one a good amount of effort. I built up or I maxed out Hoffreys. I had previously built him for Faction Wars level 50, but I took him to 6-star, and you can see a partially level, didn't fully invest just yet. And then Zargala, I rebuilt her, used to use her for Faction Wars as well, so made her 6-star, put some fresh gear on her to see if we can do enough damage to wave 1, and still not enough. I was in the process, you can see here, of building up to it in the Runic to kind of be our tank. And then obviously when he counterattacks, or when he attacks with the A1, he has a chance to remove debuffs from your allies. And then I didn't really have a 5th spot, so I just threw in Ironclad for the time being. He's in a Toxic set, in which I used for Doom Tower secret rooms as well. But most likely what I want to do, if I really wanted to clear this in the future, is actually build up Bowsmith Flannan, who's a rare, but he has a stun on the A1, double hitter, so 2 chances, and then AoE decreased speed, which is just helpful because it helps slow them down. And my plan is to try and get him in a stun set, so that one, he has an AoE, so a chance to stun, but also, again, the decreased speed, and then just having, a 3rd chance, so to speak, to stun whenever he uses the A1. So it could be very strong. And I think having that little bit of control would be just what I need to get over the edge, because wave 1 is pretty brutal, honestly. It's like Queen Ava, the buffed Queen Ava, I might add, Lydia, who for decreased defense and weaken, so you're really easy to kill afterward, and then 2 Rays, so it's just like you can get murdered very easily, and then your negative affinity against Queen Ava, so you may or may not actually be able to kill her. They are squishy because they are attack based, obviously, but yeah, it was just tough. And so that little bit of control probably would have been the way to go, obviously with some RNG involved. But obviously, I have not built him yet. I don't have a stun set for him yet, so that's just something to work on more Far Night in the future. And I don't know, maybe next time when it comes around, I'll take him up to 6-star. Maybe I'll swap some stun gear around just to see if I can get through. But for now, I just kind of tabled it, and we'll address it when it comes back into rotation. And last but not least, we have the big bad boss in the middle. And honestly, I thought this one was going to be quite straightforward, but it was a lot more difficult than I thought in order to make to be successful, because he would start to do really, really weird things in the middle of the fight. Like I'd be like 2/3 of the way in or halfway in, then he would just switch his rotation up and just start murdering me, picking people off in Form 2. It was really, really annoying. I think part of the problem with the comp that I have, at least, is that I didn't have a good buff to force him into the right rotation on Form 2, and so that just kind of plagued me a little bit. But I tried a bunch of different DPS, and eventually I just settled on Newt, because Newt does Newt things. But he was just the quickest as far as killing the boss before he started to get a little weird after a certain amount of cycles. And then honestly, one thing I wanted to highlight here is the Walking Tomb Drang. Obviously, it's quite dangerous to use abilities that reduce cooldowns of other abilities, because that pushes him closer to swapping forms, because he's a mythical boss. But what I ended up doing was that essentially I would use that ability, his A3 that can reset the cooldown of the A2. I would use it on the turn right before he was going to swap forms anyway, so it effectively didn't do anything. It didn't make his turn or make his form swap come sooner, because he was already going to do it on the next turn. And so that's part of why I wanted to use Walking Tomb Drang, or that's how I used Walking Tomb Drang in this particular team, obviously on top of being able to place the irresistible HP burn and activate it on the A1. So just a kind of cool thing to note about how I approached this particular fight. Doom Priest was most certainly kind of MVP status, because she's in a Relentless set, and whenever she could just pop off multiple turns, it's a bunch of healing, and also you can cleanse off the sleep, so you don't necessarily miss that one turn in his rotation on Form 2, so that's pretty nice. And yeah, stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of champions I really wanted to use and I just couldn't, like Ancora, because when she revives, she resets cooldown, which just basically automatically makes him change form and bad things happen. So stuff like that just didn't really end up working. But yeah, pretty cool. Like this team. Heal reduction is obviously Venom Mage, MVP for Amius for sure, and then Python is our primary and I guess our soul reviver. So super tanky, the whole shebang. Pretty high awakened as well, so he doesn't take that much damage if he happens to get targeted. So as far as champions that were built for this particular rotation, I kind of hinted at them already as we went along, but nonetheless I will highlight them directly. So the first one, or there were two that were rebuilt. Again, former Faction Wars champion, so one of which was Zargala, and you can see here she's in a smattering of gear. So we have accuracy set, offense set, and then divine crit rate. So nothing fancy, just a little bit of attack, some accuracy to make sure she lands her decreased defense. And then I was a little bit shy on crit rate, and so I wanted to finish that out with the divine crit rate, and also it gives her a little bit of a shield. It's not substantial, but it is kind of enough. Well, it wasn't enough to keep her alive, but it's enough to give her a little bit of a backbone in some fights. And then Hot Freeze, the Tusk, is down here. Currently he's still being leveled, but he's in a regen set. He's our primary reviver on the team, and I do have him booked. Him and Zargala are booked, I might note. And I built him in relatively high resistance, I would say 450 in a regen set. Kind of like the scraps of regen that just no one else was using, so I didn't steal it from anyone who's more important. But yeah, so really high resistance, so he wouldn't get stunned or controlled or anything, debuffed by Lydia, stuff like that. But like I said, I needed more control from like a Flannan, both Smith's Flannan or something like that to really make that stage work. And the champions that were freshly built, I mentioned Dudan the Runic, who is not fully maxed out. He's still 5-star and he's not even level 50 ready to be 6-starred yet. Again, I just ran out of time, didn't really get to it. And I honestly didn't think he was going to make a difference at this point because of what I've already mentioned a couple times. Needed another champion. But you can see here, the intent was to put him in a Guardian set so that he can absorb some damage on behalf of other people, especially with that taunt ability kind of drawing attention. I did not book him. CVC is going on right now, so I could book him, but I don't really need the points, and it's non-PR, so I don't really care to do that. And again, it's not going to affect the success of the run because a 5-star champion is a really, really bad tank in the Curse City. He's just not strong enough, and obviously the gear's not even maxed. He's not even the right, he's not full speed. He's not full. He doesn't have as much defense or HP that he really needs. So all of those things are just kind of working against him as far as tanking is concerned. But you can see here, what we're trying to go for is to have him again be similar to Offreys, be a high resistance champion so he doesn't get debuffed and so he can be a proper tank, take some damage on behalf of other people, then also again counterattack with his ability and remove debuffs from all the people who don't have high resistance. And the last one that was freshly built for this is MVP of stage 6, and that is Rock Breaker, who we have in a Frost set and an Immortal set. So Immortal, just a little bit of healing because he does take damage because he is provoking, and then the Frost set because he is provoking, so there's a chance, small chance, but nonetheless a chance, 20% chance, whenever he is hit from the provokes that they get a freeze, which can be effectively 2 turns of CC for the price of 1 turn of the placing the provoke. So yeah, very, very useful for that stage. And I haven't used him thus far in previous rotations, but I also probably haven't made it far enough into certain depths of the Soulcross on other rotations to really utilize him. So I'm sure he'll be very, very useful in some other iterations. So yeah, that's going to do it for my progression through the last unique rotation of the Cursed City. Once again, do let me know in the comment section down below if you guys want me to continue this series, focusing more on how far I'm able to get in each rotation, but skipping the parts where we highlight all of the bosses, because I will be most likely reusing the same teams that I've already used, and so there won't be anything new to discuss there. Also, of course, let me know how far you were able to get in this iteration of the Cursed City Rotation 5. Hopefully you made it further than I did. And yeah, one of these rotations, I guess 1 and 2 are basically the only ones where I've actually progressed decently far. So hopefully that one of those is the one that comes up next. But I'd like to progress into, a little bit further and try out some more stages and get stock and build up more champions, because, at the end of the day, that's part of the reason why we play the game. But I will mention here while I'm at it that my focus as far as developing champions, I'm still working on Hydra teams. I'm almost there, I think. I still have to do some more testing, so stay tuned, as I've promised many, many times, but the Hydra video is coming fairly soon. But my focus is more on Hydra champions, and so I have to mix and match between who gets 6-star next, between who's going to work for some other pieces of content versus ones that are super niche and limited only to the Cursed City. So that's why I don't have like the bandwidth to just max out every single champion who I need for the Cursed City immediately. So got to balance things out. Free to play just means, once again, you don't have access to max out every single champion every time you need them, right? So there's a pecking order, so to speak, and sometimes there's a higher priority in other areas of the game. But enough rambling. So if you did find this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below. And if you did enjoy the video, then be sure to subscribe to the channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.